Born in the Hughes Hospital in Spanish Fork, Utah, January
15,
1930. Here is a picture of Joseph A. at approximately age 2. Here is a picture of me with my father and my sister. And here is a picture of me with my mom, my maternal great-grandmother Noland, and my sister. At this juncture, I should describe the broad outline of the operation of the Bagnall Ranch. I have already explained that Joe and Will, the Bagnall brothers, developed a large cattle and sheep ranch with a vast acreage of grazing lands. To maintain this ranch, we owned a threshing machine, tractors, hay rakes, a wheat binder, trucks, a blacksmith shop, welding equipment, a hay loader, and other equipment. It would seem that a young man born into this powerful family would have special opportunities and an outstanding childhood. Instead, I lost my childhood in a grim and lonely place. Each successive summer after 1935, I found myself living away from my father, mother, and sister with my grandparents on the Chester Ranch. At age 6, I had my first full-time job. I spent my summer riding the hay horse, 8 hours per day, 6 days per week. Here is a description of my work environment. On a typical day, successive wagons, with no rest time in between, would pull up to the haystack in one of our feed yards. Here is a picture of one of our 3 hay wagons. Hovering over the stack was a derrick, rigged together by our workmen with pine poles. In form and function, the derrick resembled an industrial crane. The tip of the derrick had an attached pulley that accommodated a cable that was fastened to a 4-foot wide Jackson fork with huge tines. The cable extended from the Jackson fork up to the tip of the derrick, back to the lower end of the derrick pole, downward to the derrick base, and outward, where it was attached to the harness of a heavy draft horse named Jack. I was perched in an uncomfortable cavalry saddle on old Jack, and on command of the teamster of the hay wagon, I would turn the horse and ride toward the hay wagon, lowering the Jackson fork down to the teamster. He in turn would tromp the huge fork down into the hay wagon, lock it in place, and shout, "Take it away." I would then ride the horse in the opposite direction, pulling a large portion of the hay load into the air, where the stacker would stick a pitchfork into it and guide the hay into the spot where he wanted it dumped. When he found that spot, he would shout, "Dump it," and the teamster would pull a trip rope fastened to the Jackson fork, and the hay would fall into place. When I heard the command, "Dump it," I turned the horse around and rode back toward the hay wagon. It was dramatic to see the derrick pole sway through the air and the Jackson fork descend toward the teamster and his load of hay. I felt a sense of power and a sense of pride. Even though I was 6 years old, I knew that I was an important part of our 9-man hay crew. But after repeating this process again and again, 8 hours per day, 6 days per week, throughout the long summer months. I was secretly hoping for anything that might disrupt this monotonous routine. Summer rain was my friend because we could not stack wet hay. In the fall of 1939, our family moved to Mount Pleasant, Utah. This is a picture of my home for the next 10 years. From 1939 to 1945, my father served as superintendent of the North Sanpete School District. After the death of my grandfather, my father resigned as superintendent and helped his cousin, Roland Bagnall, manage the family ranch. Here is a picture of North Sanpete High School. I attended this school for my academic years, 7th through 11th grade. In 9th grade, I served as student body president of the junior high. In 11th grade, I was the prom master of our junior prom. I am pictured here top left with our class officers and our prom mistress, Norma Jensen, who is top right. The theme of our prom was Daybreak. It was chosen not only because it was the title of a popular song of the day, but also because it symbolized the end of World War II and the return of millions of veterans. It was a new day, we said, when peace would replace war and prosperity would replace the hopeless days of the Great Depression. Covering a major portion of the east wall of our ballroom was a magnificent mountain scene of a sunrise bursting forth through the quaking aspens. The watercolor painting was rendered by faculty member and famed Utah artist Max Blaine. Bright yellow streamers flowed out from the top of this mountain scene. The streamers changed to light orange and then to light blue, culminating in sky blue at the outer reaches of the hall. The decorations were designed and hung by classmates and myself. Here is a profile view. I am on the right with some friends from North Sanpete High. We are at Jerry Jones' Rainbow Rendezvous in Salt Lake City, a nightclub that featured the big name bands of the day, from Benny Goodman to Stan Kenton. Since it was against the law to have liquor on the table in a Utah nightclub, it was normal for adults and adolescents to enjoy an evening at the Rainbow together. This was an exciting experience. For my senior year in high school, I lived with my paternal grandmother, Hannah Christensen Bagnall, in Salt Lake City. I attended South High School. At South, I won the Cadet of the Month medal in ROTC, represented South with 4 students from other Salt Lake high schools in a radio discussion of national issues, and was a sports reporter on the South High Scribe. This was my senior picture, taken from the South High Annual for 1948. I am pictured here as a reporter on the Daily Utah Chronicle. As a freshman, I wrote the story for the retirement of the number 33 worn by All-American basketball player Vern Gardner. This picture was taken from the Utonian, the student annual for 1950. And here is the Vern Gardner story. As a young man in my early 20s, I spent a wonderful semester at Los Angeles City College. We had a beautiful campus in 1952. I was inspired by the vine-covered administrative structure and the spacious quad. I was fascinated with the ethnic diversity, and my professors seemed to compare quite favorably to the ones I had studied under at the University of Utah. I remember attending a daytime guest lecture by Will Durant and getting his book, The Story of Philosophy, autographed, and on another occasion hearing Dorothy Thompson, wife of Sinclair Lewis, and a celebrity in her own right. She correctly predicted an end to the Korean War soon. Other exciting events included basketball games and a hypnosis demonstration in the psychology department. After fall semester 1952, I transferred from LA City College to Cal State Los Angeles, a new school that was being set up through the administrative leadership of President Howard McDonald on our very own LACC campus. So Cal State LA's original home was the LA City College campus. For the next 2 years, I pursued and completed my BA degree in elementary education at newly formed Cal State LA. My professors at LACC had modeled for me, mentored me, and inspired my life goal of becoming a professor at a community college. So when my new wife and I moved to Temple City, California, to accept a job teaching in an elementary school, I knew that this was just a first step in a long pathway to becoming a community college professor. For the next 4 years, I worked at newly built La Rosa Elementary School and took evening classes so that by 1959, I had completed a master's degree in history and political science, and I could begin a 2-year career as a high school teacher at Monterey High on the Monterey Peninsula. While there, I had my first college teaching position as an evening adjunct in U.S. history at Monterey Peninsula College. What great fun! In order to continue my career pathway, I came back to Millikan High School in Long Beach as my daytime job and enrolled in evening classes for the doctoral program in history at University of Southern California. After 3 years at Millikan and 35 additional units in history from USC, I was hired for my first full-time teaching position at Fullerton College in 1964. I had at last arrived. Now, before I speak of the completion of my doctorate at UCLA, I will list some special experiences along my career pathway. At Monterey High, I was in charge of the national award-winning weekly student newspaper called The Galleon. At Millikan High, we had a student population of over 3,000, and we identified 100 students with IQ of 140 and above. These students were placed in a gifted tracking program, taught in a large lecture hall, and they were assigned a college text. They were given advanced classes throughout the day. Ben Levine and I team taught their advanced class in U.S. history. At commencement in the spring, these students were announced as recipients of many full-ride scholarships to Ivy League and top technical schools. Ben Levine and I also taught an academically talented section of 100 students with 125 to 140 IQ. At Fullerton College, I was assigned to be advisor to the International Club. On April 22, 1968, our International Club invited foreign students from 9 other community colleges for an International Day Gala. Our event became the lead story with a banner headline in the Hornet, the Fullerton College student newspaper. The article describes the following events of the day: a full-length movie on the life of Albert Schweitzer, a karate demonstration, a radio telesymposium. This was a communications coup. Radio talk show host Joel Spivak brought his 3-hour KLAC radio talk show to campus. He sat on stage in the campus theater with a foreign student panel and myself. We, in turn, were hooked via telephone with Senator Robert F. Kennedy of New York, Senator Thomas Kuchel of California, and Senator John Tower of Texas. Questions were posed by the panel to the senators on 2 topics, Red China and Vietnam. The questioners also included students who lined up and participated on air with microphones that were set up in the aisles of the theater, and people who called in from the vast Southern California radio audience. There were also large images of the senators projected on a background screen as they answered questions. This 3-hour program was thoroughly informative and entertaining. A dance in the Fullerton College Student Center featuring the Disney Hotel Quartet was the final event of the day. It was my privilege to work with the foreign students to bring this International Day Gala to fruition. Here are my most important books. The first is a survey of United States history in summary form, with, as the subtitle suggests, an emphasis on major crises such as the Civil War and the Great Depression. This book was published by Kendall Hunt. The second book is The Kennedy Option: Pursuit of World Law. This book was originally published by the University Press of America. The second edition was published by CreateSpace publishing platform. This is my autobiography, which I self-published with iUniverse. As a young man, I was very dissatisfied with the way the media defined President John F. Kennedy. They seemed to always be merchandising him with 3 themes. First, they cast him as a prince in syrupy Camelot roles. Second, they cast him as a central figure in a murder mystery. And third, they always honored him on the day of his assassination. I chose to honor him on the anniversary of his birth and to identify his legacy, which was as the president who, above all, was an advocate of world peace. My first attempt to do this was on the anniversary of his 70th birthday. For this occasion, I wrote and produced a television documentary titled John F. Kennedy's Lost Pathway to Peace. Narrated by Robert Vaughn, this program aired nationally on TBS and regionally on KCET Los Angeles, a PBS TV affiliate at that time. Both air dates were May 29, 1987, the 70th anniversary of JFK's birth. This 30-minute documentary is available on Amazon.com and for viewing on Prime Video. Next, I published President John F. Kennedy's Grand and Global Alliance, World Order for the New Century, as a memorial for his vision for peace and the 75th anniversary of his birth. It was published by University Press of America. According to WorldCat.org, the world's largest library catalog, this book can now be found in public and university libraries throughout the world. Among the university libraries are Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Georgetown, Columbia, Notre Dame, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the 6 branches of the University of California, including Berkeley, and Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. The paperback edition has back cover endorsements by famed political scientist Jack W. Peltison, Stanford biologist Paul Ehrlich, Theodore Hesburgh, President Emeritus of Notre Dame, and Mario Molina, Nobel Prize winner for his work as co-discoverer of ozone depletion. On May 29, 1992, the 75th anniversary of the birth of President Kennedy, I was interviewed by Charles Osgood on the CBS radio network. Here is the interview.
The Osgood Files, sponsored in part by Selected Funds. I'm Charles Osgood. Had it not been for an event that occurred 3 decades ago, there would be among us a senior citizen famous around the world. What would he look like now, this so familiar figure? The hair would have thinned and grayed. Would he be bent now? Would the eyes still have that twinkle? Had he lived, there would be a party today and a birthday cake, and hard as it may be to accept, John Fitzgerald Kennedy would be 75. Stand by. Joseph Bagnall, who teaches at Maricosta College in Oceanside, California, thinks the world should take note of John Kennedy's 75th birthday.
The media will ignore Kennedy's birthday because they remember Kennedy on the day of the assassination. And I feel they have defined him in large measure as the lead role in Camelot, or a central figure in a murder mystery, or in terms of his private life. And Kennedy is far more than that.
Dr. Bagnall is author of a book, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy's Grand and Global Alliance.
If Kennedy were alive, I am certain that he would speak of the need to develop enforceable world law to cope with the new environmental impingements, ozone depletion, acid rain, global warming, and other ominous threats to human survival.
Survival is the key to understanding Kennedy historically, Bagnall says.
He spoke of a survival perspective, and that was the central thrust of his legacy. And we really need to concentrate on his survival perspective as we move toward the 21st century.
He was a cold warrior because there was a real threat then, says Bagnall. But Kennedy was a visionary.
He kept telling us that we must look across this world of threats, the world of the Cold War, and work for the day when we could have a grand and global alliance.
Against poverty, war, disease, those enemies. Oh, yes, says Bagnall, history will say that Kennedy was a great president.
Oh, I'm certain of it. we've had little time to concentrate on them because we've dealt with the sensational.
The Osgood File. Charles Osgood on the CBS Radio Network.
Here is the centenary edition of the book that was introduced for the 75th anniversary of JFK's birth. Unfortunately, in 2017, the ideals and values of JFK had been tossed on the ash heap of history. The centenary edition had to be self-published, and the attention given to the centenary edition was minimal at best. I was 86 years old when I published the centenary edition of the Kennedy book. In that same year, I recorded a television program entitled Doc's Last Lecture, Why Kennedy Matters. In this recorded lecture, I was able to summarize the message of my Kennedy book and send it to community access stations in Massachusetts and California. It aired multiple times on community access stations for 11 major cities in Massachusetts and for 4 major cities in California. And now that we have covered my major publications and my lifelong promotion of JFK as an advocate of world peace through world law, we move from this broad topical approach back to a strict chronological survey. You will recall that when we were proceeding chronologically, we talked about teaching the gifted at Millikan High in Long Beach, 1961 to 1964, and working with foreign students at Fullerton to present an International Day Gala. I taught at Fullerton College from 1964 to 1970, a total of 6 years. Let's resume chronologically now and focus on my work as an administrator in the Santa Barbara City College Continuing Education Division. In 1970, I was hired as a coordinator at SBCC. In a year's time, I advanced to the position of Assistant Dean. In my 12 years as an administrator at SBCC, I was directly responsible for the following areas of continuing education supervision: world, national, and local affairs, philosophy and humanities, science, music, ESL, basic education, citizenship programs, and adult evening high school. For 10 of the 12 years, I also administered buildings and grounds and the student body account. Over a 12-year period, 1970 through 82, each term I supervised over 80 instructors who served in the categories I have just listed. In addition to preparing ever-changing classes for adults and hiring new teachers, I also hired nationally prominent lecturers for community lectures. Speakers such as George McGovern, Ralph Nader, Edward Teller, Ramsey Clark, and Admiral Rickover were presented each term in our national pace-setting adult education program. In fact, the national president of the Adult Education Association of that day called our program the most comprehensive, diversified, community-responsive program in the United States. For a more detailed account of all of this, go to YouTube and find the documentary entitled Glory Days of the Santa Barbara City College Continuing Education Division, or read the autobiography of Joseph A. Bagnall. In 1973, while serving as an administrator at Santa Barbara City College, I earned my Ed Doctorate at UCLA. My doctoral dissertation was entitled "The Development and Maintenance of a Comprehensive Continuing Education Division at the Community College Level." It contains a history of adult continuing education in Santa Barbara, also the development and structure of the Santa Barbara City College continuing education program of that day, how it was operated, and how it was maintained. There are 4 copies of the dissertation extant. One is in the UCLA library. The second is at the Santa Barbara Historical Society and Museum. The third is owned by my daughter, Ashley Davis, who is a professor at a community college. And the fourth is owned by former president of Santa Barbara City College, President Anthony Beebe. I was a sophomore in college when I married Phyllis Luck. My work and study kept me away from home far too much. After 27 years, the marriage ended in divorce. This picture was taken in 1965 when I was a professor at Fullerton. At that time, Phyllis had been elected president of Faculty Wives. Top, left to right. Pamela was vice president of Wilshire Junior High. In later life, she married a contractor and builder. At this time, she owns and operates a bed and breakfast in the famous Paso Robles wine country. Next, top left, Nancy. She became a New York fashion model and later a dance instructor and a personal trainer. Lower left, Melanie graduated from the police academy and has worked in that field. Bottom right, Joseph McCoy is the 5th generation Joseph Bagnall. As a young man, he would become an Eagle Scout. As an adult, he is a mechanic and a restorer of older automobiles. In 1982, I was serving my last year as an administrator at Santa Barbara City College. I opted for an early retirement and married my secretary, Naomi Blasio. At her commencement at Santa Barbara City College, Naomi was recognized as the outstanding woman student of the graduating class. After graduation, she served on a medical mission to Guatemala and later became an au pair in France. Naomi and I attempted retirement on the Chester Ranch. After 3 years, we enthusiastically returned to California. Our marriage has lasted for 37 years. We had 1 child, Ashley Jo Bagnall Davis. Ashley had a successful high school career at El Camino High in Oceanside, California. She passed a few advanced placement tests with high scores and was a member of the National Honor Roll. Her high school resume indicates that for extracurricular activities, she concentrated on speech and debate. She has the all-time school record for number of debate trophies won, and she had the female lead role in 2 high school plays, namely Rachel in Inherit the Wind and Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing. She now holds a BA degree from UC San Diego in English Literature, and in the spring of 2019, She received an MS degree in child development from San Diego State. 1 week after her graduation from SDSU, she was hired as a full-time professor of child development at Palo Verde Community College in Blythe, California. Here is a picture of her parents and her maternal grandfather at her graduation from San Diego State University. In 2016, my final year at Palomar, the college awarded me the Distinguished Faculty Award. Here is the plaque. My last class at Pendleton was truly memorable. When the last student finished his final and left the room, I was erasing the board and startled to see the whole class pouring back into the room. Then one student came to the front and presented me with a handsome cherry wood plaque with all of the places I had taught in the last 61 years listed. Where they got all of this information is puzzling. Next, they asked me to model a handsome dinner jacket, which I did. And then a young lady came up and presented me with a dark black coffee cup and explained that when it was filled with a hot beverage, it turned to white with a picture of FDR. Then there were hugs and last goodbyes, and it was done. The end of a very happy time for me. In fact, my years at Palomar were the happiest days of my life, and here was an important part of it. At Santa Barbara City College, I was able to schedule top jazz talent for exciting community performances. At Palomar, I could serve as a guest jazz host on KKSM, Palomar College Radio. I hosted a weekly show called Doc's Jazz. Unbeknown to me, The station manager submitted a recording of one of my shows to the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System competition in New York. It was a total surprise when I learned that I won the first place trophy for 2018 in the volunteer category. I was listed as a distinguished alumni by the Los Angeles City College Foundation many years ago, but it was very special when in the year of my retirement, 2016, they hung this banner on campus. At age 90, I am abundantly fulfilled and living happily with my wife of 37 years.